we're very fortunate to have two music professionals who are going to share with you some ideas of things that maybe you haven't thought about pursuing in the music business and possible income streams. So this is Daniel Bindler of Paramount Company and Kristin Genovese of Third Side Music. Right?
Yep.
And you're in for a really informative event, so welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to come in and speak to a music theory class a couple of weeks ago. We talked about some of this stuff already, and we decided it would be a good idea to kind of open it up to more of the program and talk more in a larger capacity of some of the things that are going on in publishing. You guys are all, I assume, producers, musicians, singer-songwriters, people who want to get into the music industry or at least perform or do something in that vein. So we thought it would be a good idea to come in here and kind of speak to you guys about some of the ways that you can find money through music and your passions and things like that. So I work at Paramount Global. They're the people who own MTV, Nickelodeon, Showtime, CBS, VH1, BET, and a ton of other channels. So what I do is I put music into television. So creative people tell me, the creative people who are making the shows tell me what music they want. I know the people who go out and kind of represent that music, and I negotiate all those deals for that music. So some of the shows I work on are Drag Race, RuPaul's Drag Race, Wild 'N Out.
One of my favorite shows.
One of the best, right?
The best.
Wild 'N Out, Jersey Shore, Family Vacation, The Challenge, Teen Mom, bunch of other ones that I can't. Oh, the Family Stallones that just premiered on Paramount Plus. A bunch of other shows. Kristin Genovese is on the pitching side. She does creative. I do more business affairs. So you can explain what you do.
Yeah, so actually know Daniel from at the very start of my career where I was working at MTV in Times Square. So I got started on the music buying side, which is the music supervision side at MTV on the production side. I knew that I wanted to do something in music. I knew that I wanted to do something in production. I wasn't sure exactly what that would look like. And I started out interning at MTV and then realized that there was this whole music licensing aspect of the production. So I got really attracted to that and ended up going in that direction. And that kind of kick-started my career in the music world. So I spent 5 years at MTV picking music for the shows and licensing music for our programs and finding artists to place in our programs. And then after that, I went on to a music publisher that moved me out to LA. So I moved out to LA and was in LA for 7 years on the music publishing side and as well as the label side. So I worked at a publisher and then I worked at Sony Music on the label side, selling our music to be used. Eventually, I was working in all media and eventually ended up specializing in advertising and promos. So that brings me to now, which I'm now at Third Side Music, which is an independent music publisher. So I went from big major label to a smaller indie publisher, and I could talk about the differences between the big major and a smaller company. But at the end of the day, my job is to represent the artists and the songwriters that we work with and get them paid. My main goal is bringing in money for our artists through specifically getting it used in commercials, TV promos, and movie trailers. So that's the department that I look after. But my team also makes sure that we are getting placed in video games and TV shows and films and anywhere that's going to be licensing music. So today we wanted to definitely just keep it also informal with having a conversation with what you guys want to hear more about, but definitely our background is in the music licensing space and where it comes to figuring out, as Daniel mentioned when you started, all songwriters, artists.
Who wants to be an artist?
Yeah.
Wants to be?
Wants to be. Or is. Who is.
Or is. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are all in school. I mean, yeah. I'm trying to.
By career.
By career. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Songwriters, producers. No. A couple of producers. Good. Sure. Why not? Sound engineers, things like that. Cool. So, we kind of figured a good idea, I mean, we all know that you can go tour, you all know you can make merchandise, you all know that fan engagement and branding is important, right? But let's talk music publishing. Let's talk the actual act of exploiting your music itself and your beats, your writing, your songwriting, your lyrics, because that's kind of where music publishing hits. It's not so much all of your artistry as an artist, it's much more about who you are and what you're actually creating in your catalog and your music that you're creating.
And it's also making sure that all your ducks are in a row so that your music is being collected. Every ounce, every dime, every penny that can make, your music can make money on is being accounted for and collected for. So I know some of you potentially have probably done some music business background, or maybe some haven't, so should we just start to go over music publishing 101 and what that looks like if I were to write a song right now, what you would have to do with
You
it?
guys
So
know?
what?
Yeah.
Kind of, so let's do
Yeah.
it.
We'll go over review over that, right?
Yeah.
So publishing, so a label is the recording of the music and the publishing is the songwriting of the music. If you're starting out right now and you don't have a publishing entity just yet, that's totally fine. There's different avenues that you can go down to make sure that your music is represented in the correct way, because there's a million, and maybe not quite a million, but hundreds of different streams for your music to be making money, and without it being properly registered, you won't be making all that money. So we want to make sure that you guys have the tools to make sure you're collecting the proper money for your work, for your art. So for publishing, there's a few different parts that you have to worry about. So the first thing would be the registration. So you register your copyrights. You guys know about the performing rights organizations, ASCAP, BMI,
Yeah.
CSAC. That's something that if you're not in a publishing deal, you can do on your own and need to do on your own. That's every time that you create a new song. So it's not just, oh, I signed up with ASCAP, that's all I have to do. Every time that you create a new song, that has to go into the system. And
Come upon you. And then if you work with other people, you make sure that you decide how each one of you is going to split the ownership of the song. So like Chris and I write a song together, we split it 50-50. We make sure that that's all kind of taken care of in the business side of things. Otherwise, we just end up fighting over it later on, and you don't want that at all.
yes, collaborating and co-writing, that's a whole other thing that happens all the time in the creative process for creating a song. And yes, you have to negotiate splits based on how much work, who did what,
Keep it simple.
Yeah, who brought what to the table to create the final product. And there's a lot of negotiating that comes with that, and sometimes politics involved. But for the most part, if we were to write a song together tomorrow, you would get 50% and I would get 50%.
I'll give you some.
So if you want to do that on your own, that's great. There are, but just because you sign up to ASCAP and BMI doesn't mean that you are fully done on the publishing front. There's still, they don't collect royalties on a global basis. They only are, they're only US based and dealing with your the performance and mechanical royalties. So that's when a company like Song Trust would come in. So have you guys heard of that?
There's a lot of different companies that do business administration and song administration for you. So you can just find places like these boutique administration houses that will help kind of create growth for artists, growth for creative, and make sure that you're kind of business in line and business in check. So you want to make sure that all of those kinds of ducks are in a row, make sure that you know all your business is happening, and make sure that you're ready to go. So in case somebody reaches out to you, let's say I want to reach out to you, I hear your song somewhere on SoundCloud or whatnot, and I want to license it for Teen Mom. If I don't know how to get in touch with you, how to pay you, how to make those things happen, then you're kind of, there's no way to make money off of those things.
Yeah, so if you aren't going out tomorrow and getting involved in a publishing deal, you definitely still want to go to one of those companies like a Song Trust. That's just one example, but if you look up publishing admin companies, they'll come up, and the other ones will come up as well, and you register your music on there, and then they're collecting for you on your behalf. You can also sign an admin deal, which is my company that I'm working for right now. We are a publisher, but we're doing admin deals, which means you still own the rights to your music, but we are your admin, and there's other services that we offer as well. So you aren't selling your rights, but you are entering into a partnership with a company who's going to do all that admin for you. You don't have to go to ASCAP every single time to register your songs. There's a whole admin team that's doing it on your behalf. And then with the admin deals, there's a split. It's usually somewhere around 85% that you will get to keep as the artist, as the songwriter, and then the other 15% the admin company takes as far as the admin fees. Yes.
What are some perks of going for an admin deal as opposed to trying to do it every single time on your own?
Absolutely great question. And the biggest thing is the team that comes with it. So when you're signing a deal to a publishing deal, whether it's an admin deal or say one of the major publishers, which Sony, Universal, Warner, Cobalt, etc., BMG, either the admin deal or a co-pub deal, the perks are definitely going to come in the sense of the team, because you're now getting a team of music industry professionals that have the relationships that are going to be able to put your music forward in a lot of the times. From my perspective, the clients that I'm working with, so in my world it's the music supervisors, the ad agencies themselves directly, the marketing team at Netflix, for example, or HBO or whatever, all the streaming services that there are. They aren't going to source music randomly online. They're going to source music from trusted partners like myself, who knows that all the music is vetted, and we can definitely go into that as well when it comes to creating music, things to watch out for, avoid, little red flags and stuff, which I'll hit in that because I definitely want to talk about that as far as samplings and cover and making sure that all your music is original and all that, but we can get to that. So the team that comes with it, who is doing everything from marketing, getting your music, sync, placements, which is my world,
It's like if
helping.
you're going to be an artist, right? If you want the people behind you to throw money behind you, then you go that route. If you want to do it more on your own and kind of do it organically, right? You want to make sure that you can, have more say in some of the things that go on, then you do it on your own.
I will say, just in general advice, as a songwriter, an artist, someone who's creating music, I don't think you necessarily need your label in line, your publisher in line, your manager, your agent, all that, but I think you need at least one other team member who's a professional in the space who's going to help advise you along the way. And so, and I think the main thing that I would say to look out for is just having someone that's in the business side of things, who's really gets your vision and is passionate about the music that you're creating, because once you have that relationship, whether it's at a publisher or a publishing admin or a third-party sync company, which I can talk about as well, or your manager who's dialed in certain ways, I think that starting with one of those things is a good place to start, and then you can kind of go from there as you build. So that's hopefully that answers the question, the services that comes with it, and making sure that you have, because also, for instance, when you sign your deal at a company, I'm just using my current one as an example, we come with insurance in case there's ever issues with licensing your music, which there can be. That whole world, and probably something that could be really helpful for you guys to understand, is the just how buttoned up everything needs to be before you're putting music on air. Because, for instance, you can make a song with your buddy and you could do a handshake deal that says, oh yeah, no, this is cool, I'm giving you these beats, no problem. And then you then go around and think, okay, I own this song 100% because my friend said I can own these tracks. And then I go license it somewhere, and then it goes on air. Next thing you know, it's on Drag Race.
So I'll tell you, here's a great example. If you watch Wild and Out, Antonio Brown just did an episode. The old football player.
Yeah.
He just did an episode. His music is pretty much, as unbuttoned up as it could possibly be. Let's put it that way. He had a handshake deal with 2 producers. I had to go out and talk to the lawyers of those producers to try and make sure that the music was okay to be put on Wild and Out. It finally got worked out. They were going to hold up the performance and not put it on air, and it finally got worked out that we were allowed to play it, as of right now. So we'll see how that works out. But Antonio Brown did not button up his music. He just thought that his friends were going to help him out, and then they went to try and get money from him. So you just never know when things like that happen.
Yeah, and so we definitely don't want, it's hard enough as an artist as it is. You would never want to get in a situation where you could be sued by a big company because you told them that you could have the rights, and then so-and-so is coming out of the woodwork saying, wait, no, I have rights to that song, and then there's a whole debacle. And really, at the end of the day, besides there could be legal trouble, but in general also, that company, that production, that director, whatever it is, might not come back and use your music again. And we're trying to form good relationships with these people who are licensing music and putting the music out, so you don't want to burn any bridges in that way.
Yeah.
Just a question. You said that like a deal with your company right now comes with insurance too, right? So how would you protect the artist if something like this would happen?
I actually didn't even realize that we had insurance like this, but we had a company off-site. My company's actually Montreal based, so I was up in Canada last week, and we were talking and learning about all the other departments and stuff, and it turns out that we do have an insurance company, and that's in the sense where if we are to license a song and you'd find out after the fact, we represent, for instance, one of the catalogs that we represent is the Studio One catalog in Jamaica, so it's a lot of the early reggae and ska music that came out of there, and that area, there's a lot of publishing discrepancies, where someone's claiming the rights, or it's an old deal, or multiple people claiming that they have ownership, and I think there was an incident in which, that there's a discrepancy, and then it had been licensed, and now there's being suing and all that. It means that that the company's only reliable for a certain amount, and then the insurance kicks in. So it would never come out of the artist's pocket in that sense, unless there's unless you lied, unless you forged something, unless again, the ducks are not in a row, because that could come back and haunt you. So you definitely want to make sure all your music is original, and there's a whole other world which is sampling and stuff, and that's something that can be done, but at the end of the day, the broad strokes of that is you can't sample someone else's music and then think you can make money off of it. You can put it on a mixtape, a bootleg, I'm sure you guys have heard that, but that's just like if you want to be a DJ would do that, for example, and make a mixtape or something just to show what they're capable of. But then when it comes time to releasing the album, you can't use samples or anything like that because you can't make money off of somebody else's. There are ways to clear the sample and then put it out, but that's a whole other
I have
chapter.
examples of that.
That's a whole other chapter.
That's why you need a team.
Yeah, that's why you need a team to make sure that these things work out. Wild and Out, because all of these artists are underground or coming up or bubbling under or trying to make it in the industry, I'm constantly finding samples in these songs that they didn't clear ahead of time. So we've literally had to pivot before they've actually performed on the show to a new song because we found out that a Jay-Z sample wasn't going to clear in the song. It's just not going to happen. If you didn't clear it originally, then you're not going to get Jay-Z to approve this song going on to Wild and Out now, for instance. It's just not going to happen. So sampling is definitely a way to get yourself well known, but as soon as that song with that sample becomes well known or popular, here's another great example, Kyle. This is an example I gave in the last class. Kyle, the rapper Kyle, has a great song called Don't Wanna Fall in Love. He was going to perform at Spring Break a couple of years ago, and one of the, he wanted to do that song or put that song on television. They never cleared the original sample that song was made from, so that we couldn't air it on television. MTV wasn't going to take the responsibility of putting that song on air, even though it's one of his biggest tracks, because he didn't do his, his label or people didn't do their work ahead of time. So we had to cut that specific song from the playlist, unfortunately. You want to see some other cool things that we've done?
Yeah.
Want to show some fun stuff or not?
We can, we
let's
can
start that,
definitely,
and then let's see where we get into from that. What do you want to show first? You guys hear that Tina Turner died today?
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
Tina Turner?
Yeah, wait, that's just like a joke. Wait, this is like the saddest breakout ever.
Well, here's Tina Turner.
I know, it's very savage, I know.
So this is Secret Celebrity Drag Race. Secret Celebrity Drag Race is lip syncing of major songs from Beyonce to Tina Turner to you name it. And they asked for 200 songs this season, and I have to go out and clear as many songs as I possibly can for them. And it is a lot. It takes a lot of time to go to all of these major artists, major publishers, and get all of their music into the show. And we clear it all media worldwide in person. It's the most expensive way that you can clear something. So this now can live in the show forever in any media that you're ever think of in perpetuity worldwide.
As it relates to that show.
As it relates to only this show.
And right, there's no out of context.
Go ahead. So that's Tina Turner. What do you want to show?
Well, I mean, I could show some.
Paramount.
Well, I wanted to like give some context
Oh, okay.
before I pulled those up, but also I could show our stuff, but I really wanted to kind of keep talking about making sure you guys are set up in the best way possible to make sure that your ducks are in a row. You feel confident to be putting music out. And also hear about like the other different jobs in the industry that as an artist you could potentially
Get into.
So we can save time for that.
Okay.
These are just like some of the projects that I worked on, but I think maybe more important you want to hear just like our advice and stuff as it comes to publishing and other jobs and stuff within the industry, right? Okay, cool.
I am particularly intrigued by like the process of shopping lyrics to artists, what that looks like and how you can make money that way.
Totally, that's another team that when you're getting into a publishing deal or even, well, that's more side from the publishing side than the legal side. The A&R team. So I have an A&R team at our company, and they are responsible for some of the artists that we work with are just songwriters. So they're not going to be the ones that are out performing. They're going to be the ones that they're trying to get, Justin Bieber to sing their tracks. And that is like any other thing in the music industry, a relationship-based process in which it's, having conversations about who organically would work together, and then having that person that represents your music who's in those rooms with these bigger, songwriter or art represent like managers of these artists, or their A&R. I think that is one of the perks in signing into a publisher or a sync agency. So do you guys know what a sync agency is? So if you're another way to go about it, if you're an independent artist and you don't want to sign a big publishing deal, is you can sign up for or get involved in signing your music to a sync agency, which is not a publisher, not a label, but they have the relationships similar to the ones that I have with the music supervisors, with the productions, and they're gonna represent your music on their behalf. So instead of them, they're not gonna collect your royalties, they're not gonna be the person who's out there registering your copyrights, but they are going to be pitching your music for you to be able to make money off of it in sync licensing. So, that there's a bunch of different third-party sing companies out there, and that is a really great option as well. And typically it'll be like 50-50 split. They won't usually, there's no advance or anything. I'm sure everything's different, and that's another thing I wanted to make sure you guys watch out for. Like, you never want to be paying someone to represent your music. That people do, that's a thing that's out there. I've seen it, and we always want to like avoid. You know, that's a red flag. Like, we should be paying you for your art and your work. So rather than just, you know, oh, I might have the contacts or whatever. No, that's not how it works. They should be the other way around. So, but 50% split, meaning they represent the music. If they get it in this TV show, maybe this TV show has $10,000. You would get. And then you would split the revenue. And of course, that $10,000, then, you know, they might have $10,000 all in, and there's all these niche terms in the licensing world. All in means publishing and master. So if you only are the songwriter and someone else is singing your song, then that $10,000 is only $5,000 because you're only on the publishing side rather than having the whole piece of the puzzle.
I also think there's a really great opportunity for a lot of these companies, whether they're boutique or some of the larger publishers. They do writers' workshops and bring people together all the time, whether they're producers and writers and camps and different types of ways to set people up to write new music together, which gets placed on albums, which gets placed as demos to be heard by Justin Bieber, as you used before, you know? So like, there's so many different ways to kind of collaborate and find ways to work with other creative people through those agencies and those people who are looking out for you and your team to make sure that you're, you know, getting into those rooms with new artists, getting into those rooms with new producers, getting into those rooms with other co-writers. I mean, there are people, like you were saying, Esther Dean literally only comes in and writes the hook. That's all she does. They'll write, you'll have Hit Boy in the room, you'll have the artist in the room, whoever it might be, Future, I don't care. And then Esther Dean will come in and write just like 6 words for the hook and then walk away and get like 5% of the song. That's literally all she does from a lyric standpoint.
But also, with that said, sometimes with these bigger songs, with a lot of cooks in the kitchen as far as publishing goes, there could be 10 different publishers. Now, if I'm clearing the song, and oftentimes in the production world, whether it's film, TV, ads, whatever, it's moving really fast. So they don't necessarily want to go for the song that has 1 million publishers. They want, or samples and all this craziness. They want something that's called one-stop music. So as much as you guys can create music that's without like so many complications, what people are looking for in the licensing world right now is easy to clear, as in there's 1 or 2 parties to come to, and knowing that you own all your own rights. And in my world, in the ad space, it's often needs to be clean and digestible hooks, meaning, let's go, you know, I am free, I am positive lyrics that are empowering, that show action, and that isn't too specific. So when you're thinking about writing music for sync licensing, that's definitely something that should be at the forefront. It's much likely that the song's going to get used if it's general themes rather than talking about this one specific incident that happened to you in this town, with this person's name. That's going to be less likely than the feeling, the like feel good and just keeping it less specific, because then it would work more broad. And just some other things that I was thinking about when we were brainstorming, just like tips for when you're creating music to get it placed. Like things like song title make a difference. Easy, these editors are going through so much different music, and they're gonna, in their brain, they're gonna click on the thing that like matches the project that they're working on, and you want the song to sound like what you're calling it, the title. So, for instance, if you're working fast and you're just gonna click on the song title, it should match the vibe that it's called. So you don't want it to have this really angry title and then be, this really soft song, because that's probably not gonna be what they're looking for. So they're just like little tricks like that to keep in mind when you're putting music out there. And like Daniel said before, that's a big thing in making sure all of your information is easily accessible on your socials, on your website, because there's nothing worse than when someone is trying to license the music and then they can't get in touch, they can't figure out where to contact you to use the music, and then they could move on to the next thing, even though they really liked your music, and that could have been a good opportunity in the first place.
And to that point, I would always make sure that you're thinking about your brand as whatever it is that you want, whether it's as a producer, as a recording artist, as a songwriter, making sure that after you leave that meeting and somebody's going to go Google you, everything that you want is like completely clean or whatever. Like, a great example I gave was, if you're going to try and be a performer in the Philharmonic, New York Philharmonic, you don't want to be out at a strip club with your cousin on social media. Like, that's not the brand that they're looking for. Like things like that. Like making sure that you know who your audience is going to be, who you're looking for, who you're trying to court from a business standpoint, who you're trying to court from a collaboration standpoint, and know that once you leave meetings, once you leave introductions, they're going to go look for you and see what's on your social medias and see if you are the kind of person that they want to work with.
And on that same tip, it's like being cautious with the people that you're working with and collaborating with as well, because that you want to make sure you're only associating with like-minded individuals who align with your mission and your vision, because you don't want them to then go off and be in some scandalous thing and then all of a sudden your music is tainted. Because there are examples within my catalog even specifically where we just don't pitch that music anymore because it's associated with an artist that is got involved in some big scandal and it doesn't align with our moral, we actually do have a line in our publishing deals, and it's the morality contract, and it's really just about being a good person. Like, we don't want to work with people that are, abusing women, for example. Like, there's just certain things that, and that is in my world, working in advertising, the brands are spending a lot of money on this music. They are going to do their research. They're not just going to use the song that fits. They're going to use the artist also that can align with
Their values.
Their values. And that runs the gamut. They're from Walmart to the cool indie brand that so there's always no one has to be squeaky clean. It's the music business.
To be fair, there's music in porn.
Yeah,
like, we're not saying don't go for that if you don't want that. For this specific thing, that's not what they're looking for.
But it's just brands want to work with artists that can align just in general, and you can help push on their platform as much as they're pushing on theirs, and it could be a mutually beneficial experience.
Yeah, I think it would be a complete example. So I was thinking, I wrote a song and I want your company to pitch my song, because I think I wrote a perfect song for, Netflix teen drama. What should I do?
So there's a few different ways to go about it. I would say first and foremost, this goes back to, what's your name?
Alexa.
What I was saying to Alexa, with one of the pros of having a representation for your music, because it's easier for you to hit up me at the company and say, hey Kristin, I just wrote this new song, can you push it to Netflix? Because I have that relationship there rather than trying to get them to notice you.
So it will be easier if the song is already out on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever that is? Or
I would say not necessarily, but this does come back to the having at least someone on your team on the business side who is able to kind of tap into the industry relationships. I will say that there are so many people in the music industry who are looking to sign the next best thing, looking to find good music out there, and it's easier than ever for people to access obviously with the internet and TikTok and everything, that if your music is quality, it's going to rise to the top at some point, because so many people are actively out there. This is our main job. You are a even if you're like an intern at a label or something, and you're an A&R intern or something, your main job is to be scouring the internet to find the best of what's out there. And so now, as independent artists, you guys have the tools out there to put your music out, and it doesn't necessarily need to be properly released, but I do think that putting it out one way or the other to then start those formal relationships, whether it's at a sync agency or a publisher, or getting that pro manager who's dialed in the industry on your team, or at the label or whatever it is, then you're going to start to have access to that Netflix show because there's someone on your team that knows who to send it to at Netflix, if that makes sense.
Right, it could start as simple as just getting your music onto SoundCloud and just seeing streams and seeing more people out there and getting into it, and starting it organically, and then as it grows and it grows and it grows, you can kind of, again, like Kristin said, you want people coming to you to find your music, to find you to collaborate. On a separate note, my good friend's father has footage that he owns from the Beatles back in the day. I know we're in a music class, but this is footage, but it's similar. It's still a content-driven market, right? It's footage from the Beatles, going back from 1964, 65, somewhere that old. He has it on like 8mm, whatever, like the reels. And this guy's been looking for him for 5 years to put it on a Netflix special. 5 years. So if you don't put it out there, if you don't know anything that's going on, and he actually called me to kind of talk about how to go about moving it around so that he can keep ownership of it and still be able to license it to this Netflix special. Or I think it's Netflix. Either way, it's a Beatles special that's coming. But 5 years, so can you imagine having to research somebody for 5 years in this day and age? I mean, we're talking about an 80-year-old guy, but like, you guys wouldn't make that mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's possible, yeah.
Take care if you want.
Yeah, you can, after the class,
We could share information. I don't have cards,
yeah.
unfortunately, but we could share.
I'm sorry, since we took a break for a second, if you didn't, whatever you didn't, can you sign your name before you leave?
Oh,
There's if you really did it, it's fine. If you didn't, can you just sign your name? That's for all of you guys.
Thanks, Tony.
That's my name, right?
Yeah, just your name.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't
No, it's-
interrupt. But
No worries. Yeah, can you tweet the music supervisor? Can you do all that? Sure, like that's a thing. And if your music is that stand out, they're going to notice. But at the end of the day, I really do recommend getting it in with some sort of representation on the business side to be able to then call. They'll likely know the music supervisor at Netflix to then send the song to. But I do think that the music that is of the quality that is being licensed, which there's tons. There's a million different levels of that. There's a million different places for music to be licensed to, but it
I
as
was
long as
talking
you're-
about Netflix just to make an example.
Yeah, no, for sure, yeah. Okay.
So as a follow-up to that question, from the artist side, I guess how big or what level of artists should you be to even approach a company like yours where it would make sense?
I don't think that it's necessarily about the level. I think it would be so exciting at our company to get, like, to meet with someone who's early in their career, who, as long as I think for everybody, when it comes, some people want to license music that's the big, wide, recognizable stuff, that's its own
Like
category.
Drag Race.
Yeah, yes, because it's a lip sync, it's the recognizable factor, there's a whole world of music licensing when it comes to big budget for ads, or trailers is a big space where they want recognizable because it's, in the world where there's so much coming at you, you want to be able to look up at your screen to, oh, what's that movie that's being, I know that song, so I'm gonna look at the screen now, oh, okay, it's the new Fast and Furious. So recognizable music has its place, but ultimately, my partners in the licensing world love working with younger artists who are, you know, it's really about if the song fits, and that doesn't matter if it's a huge artist or a emerging artist, but it's about the quality, I would say, and if it's a fit for the project. There's, in fact, a lot of benefits for, you know, on my end, one of the first questions, we pitch music, they like a song, one of the first questions is this song being used elsewhere? They love when it's not being used elsewhere. They want to be the ones who put that artist on the map. They would, a lot of my briefs, and the briefs meaning what the music supervisors, the people buying the music, write and say, we are looking for the next car commercial, these are the parameters, this is what we want it to sound like, or, you know, sometimes there's more information, some people give less and you have to be more creative, but one of the main things that they ask for a lot of the times is, you know, we want this to be emerging artists, we want to break an artist with this song. So I don't necessarily think it matters about your stature, but it's really just about the quality of the song and if that's gonna stand out.
Can I jump into this?
Yeah, of course.
So you guys probably don't remember this, but years ago, before any of this sync world really existed, everybody was making money and everybody was discovering music from the radio. Nobody knew else, and like major labels were just pushing music out on the radio, and that was how you guys discovered music, right? And you guys are probably young. This was how we discovered music. But now, you know, somewhere around, you know, when Napster happened, and then a little bit after Napster, that's when the sync world exploded. Like 2002, 2003, the sync world exploded, and one of the greatest things I heard was, I started loving music from the OC and Grey's Anatomy and like other shows where they were breaking songs and artists that you just never heard before. MTV started doing it with the little MTV soundtrack at the bottom of every song, every episode that you watched for the show. They used to show ad cards at the end of television shows to say, hey, in this last Dawson's Creek episode, you heard XYZ artist in this song. These things were new back then. Now it just comes with the territory that you are listening to new music through television now. You're not necessarily going to the radio to hear, you know, what Funkmaster Flex is listening to, or what Q104 is playing, or, you know, 92.3, or like whatever radio station. It's not happening that way anymore. You're hearing it from your friends, or your friend watched a Netflix show, heard this song, came back and told you about it. You know, things like that are happening now, and that's how people are discovering music. So when people are trying to find music for television, they want that. They're looking for that. The music supervisors, here's another great example. Teen Mom. You may only get $500 to put that song in a Teen Mom episode, but how many times does Teen Mom repeat over and over and over again on MTV channels? You'll be making money on the back end for every single time that happens.
If your song is registered with
your song is registered and taken care of, and you do your business.
So, yeah, that just is a perfect example of why you need to make sure that.
So you only make $500 up front for that one song, but because you have you're part of like a small boutique agency that represented that song, like Marmoset or even Third Side or like somebody like that, they're gonna collect money for you every time that song gets used in that, just every time that show airs, it's gonna get you a royalty into that, you know, and it airs all the time, so many marathons.
Yeah.
First question.
Sorry, I know I came in the middle.
All good.
All good.
I was in class.
No worries.
So I'm really curious as to how exactly it works. I've been doing a lot of research on sync licensing, and I guess my question is, exactly how do you start? Is there like an agency that you have to go through? How established do you need to be? And like what body of work do you need to put on display to be chosen and ultimately get paid?
There's a lot of different ways.
Yeah. We might even have two different answers, so let's hear what you're
Okay,
gonna
so
say.
from a business standpoint, because again, I do a lot more on the business side, she does a lot more on the creative side, I would say it can come from anywhere. All you have to do is, like for Wild 'N Out, I always go back to Wild 'N Out because I'm constantly searching for these little co-writers who only have like 10% of the song, who's like a good friend of the artist or the good friend of the producer, and I have to go get their approval. And they're gonna make some money off that use, you know, and then Wild and Out goes on to like Pluto TV, and it's a long-ass marathon of Wild and Out episodes all day, every day, and you just get money and you get royalties from those uses. So it could be as simple as just being a co-writer and getting that art, and that artist blows up and you rise with the tide, all the way up to, I have like 18 songs ready to go, I think it would be great, and and what we haven't talked about yet is things like production music libraries. Let's say you don't want to be an artist that actually puts music out there. You just want to write jingles and write songs for commercials that don't have lyrics, or like trailers that are all like instrumental or score music or used in educational purposes. Like all these avenues are out there to create music for, and you can just go to, you can get yourself noticed by these these agencies, these production music libraries that will represent your catalog and try and put it in some of these less exciting and glamorous spaces, but still just as lucrative. Does that make sense? You want to continue off that?
Well, my first answer to your question is there is not one place where you go and say, this is where I want to submit my music. Maybe that's a good business idea where there should be. No, but the point is there's so many different companies that are representing music that if that's something, if you're making music that is, aligned with the stuff. I always say, like, you don't want to be copying what's out there, but you can hear what's being used. You can say, you'd be like, okay, my song is similar in that vein, like I could do this, okay, I'm gonna keep going, keep pushing, and putting your music out there. I think you weren't in the room yet, but I was just saying, like, as long as you get your music out there and it's of the quality, somebody is going to find it. I think you're already doing like the work, which is coming into rooms like this and attending these things and going to conferences, and because then that's how you meet more people. Our jobs, we've both gotten, been in the industry for a while through, going to all those extra things, showing up, meeting as many people as you can. It's definitely, in a lot of businesses are similar, but music industry specifically, relationship based. You want to be hustling for yourself, and then getting someone on your team who then is going to hustle for you. So that's the biggest part of building your team, because one person can't do it all. There's so many different avenues in the industry that you're the expert in the creating the music, and as the artist and expressing your creative vision, you want someone on your team that's gonna then have the relationships to then place it in sync. Specifically, that's what you're asking. But I would say there's definitely a lot of different companies who are representing music, and I was saying before, like, you don't have to necessarily sign a pub deal. You could sign a sync licensing deal.
Administration deal.
I don't think you have to be in any level of your career besides having some music to put forward, and if it's a match, then they're gonna, people, and it just depends. There's not one specific place to go, because it depends what a company's looking for at the time, Right now, our company won't sign like all of the same stuff. We want to make sure we have, so that, like for instance, I'm getting asked for a lot of Latin music right now, because as you know, that's like, it just reached over $1 billion in streaming income. It's obviously everywhere, and our company doesn't have tons of that. We have some, but we want to build that. So definitely looking to sign in that capacity. So it just kind of, there's no blanket answer, because it depends what certain companies are looking for. But a lot of companies are looking for that right now. They want to get in partnership with artists that they can then make money with the artists and for the artists.
So even though you're not actively using the music from the artist, you are building a catalog for when you want to use it. So are you paying the artist outright, or are you like renting from the artist?
That's actually a great question, because there's a few different ways that it can work. And so if say you're going to do a sync licensing deal, for the most part, I don't think there needs to, every company is different, but when I did work for a company that we were just sync representation, and it was just a 50-50 split on any income that's procured. So,
and that's typical.
I think that's typical for a sync agency. if you're signing into a, so my company is an independent publisher and we do admin deals. So if you're signing into an admin deal and they're taking, and that's usually like an 85-15 split where the artist gets to keep 85 and then the publisher takes about 15%. If it's anything more than that, then there should definitely, then there's advances. And that comes when advances are to be expected if your music is already making money. So it's an advance is, we're a publishing company, we are gonna pay you for the rights to represent the music, and you're either doing a co-pub, which is you're gonna give up some of that ownership, but if you're gonna give up some of that ownership, you wanna make sure that the advance is a lot higher, because you don't want to be thinking that the advance is big money at the time, but then realizing that over the course of however many years the deal is, that doesn't really add up for you, and if all of a sudden your song goes up, which hopefully it does, then you realize that you got yourself into a bad deal. So I really...
Entity value.
Yeah, exactly. You know, barring an advance, you want to make sure that it's in your favor, meaning you're not signing your rights away. I honestly think that admin is like an admin deal where they're just handling your admin and you're not giving up any of your publishing. That would be my advice. That would be the way to go.
Ownership is key.
Unless you are already an established artist making tons of money, and then there's like the selling off of your catalog, which is a whole other conversation.
That's Paul Simon level.
Yeah, that's yeah, exactly. And everybody's, you know, kind of doing that now, but that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I think from, you know, as an emerging songwriter artist perspective, you want to be finding a company, first of all, that you feel like you're vibing with the people and they get your vision, they love your music, and because at the end of the day, my job is to sell the music that's within our catalog, and I can only do that if I like the music and I really feel passionate about the artist. And so you want to find that teammate that's going to be like, yes, I love this, I like what you're doing, I really want to work hard for you and get your music placed out there. And once you decide that that's the place that you want to go for, you want to make sure that you're not signing into something that's going to sell your rights for a long period of time. I think like to look for like shorter period deals is better, like trial relationship. How are you going to know that, or how are you going to know where you're going to be in a few years? Or so like you could do like a year deal or like a 3-year deal. Those are
So is it like renting? Like, do they rent your music and then have to like re-up on the licensing once like the trial period is over, or how does that?
Yeah, I guess they're representing it for you on your behalf for that agreed upon period of time. So I haven't thought of it like the renting aspect of things, but I think it's more just
It's a partnership.
Yeah, it's more of a partnership because
for a period of time.
yeah, because if you're not going into like a co-pub deal, then you're not giving up any of your rights. They're really
They're working for you, basically.
and the idea is that you're now getting this whole other team on board who can then bring in money in other ways that you wouldn't be able to.
Again, yeah, if you can't do it on your own, you bring in a team that wants to work with you, that generates revenue for you. Because again, we're here to try and make money, right? Or make a living making music. So you find these people who are on board with what you're trying to do, whether those are, again, think outside the box, you know, whoever it could be, but you know, that knows what they're doing and can find some place for you to make some revenue and make sure it's all kind of, you know, bundled up together. You had a question over here.
Yes.
I know, it was a while ago.
I think it was, what can you expect percentage-wise when it comes to royalties on the back end for something that's just starting out versus more popular?
What do you mean by on the back end, if you don't mind me asking?
Like, with your Teen Mom example.
So
like,
sync royalties are paid up front.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's do a quick royalty breakdown, right? So there's mechanical. Mechanicals are when you sync, you know, the first time our music gets put onto some kind of tangible medium, So back in the day, it was a CD. Before that, it was a LP, you know, right? Now it's streaming services. So all of those are, is mechanical, is streaming still considered mechanical?
I think
Or is
so,
it
yeah.
separate? Yeah. So mechanicals
Mhm,
are,
streaming is, yes.
and those are done, and those are, you know, paid to the record labels and the artists and their songwriters of the song, right? Then there is sync royalties. Sync royalties is when the music itself is attached to some kind of visual medium. That could be TV, commercials, and that's kind of the world that we live in. Then there's performance royalties. Performance royalties is a set, I think it's set at this point.
We have a
know.
whole royalty
Performance is a whole-
department
yeah.
that I defer to.
But performance royalty is where you collect from your PRO establishment, from whether that's ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. And they collect royalties on behalf of getting a full-scale idea of what's being shown on television, or concert goers, basically every single major venue and TV network has some kind of PRO deal, or has a PRO deal with all of the PROs, in that they pay a large sum of money to play all music that's covered under these PROs, which is obviously all the music in the United States. But they pay a large sum of money, or they should pay a large sum of money, and all that money gets distributed throughout the riders that are, handled by that PRO. Now, a teen mom, which plays, I don't know the exact algorithm that they use to negotiate the royalty, or decide like this teen mom episode gets X rate compared to like a drag race episode, compared to a trailer, compared to something like that. I don't know how they work that out, but it takes like a large swath of programming and then divvies it all up into how they work it out. But because Teen Mom replays so often, it obviously gets a little bit more money. Just you may get a smaller chunk or percentage, but it's a small chunk from a larger pie rather than a large chunk from a smaller pie. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
To some degree?
And I don't think it's like make a living money, like the royalties.
It's just like a nice check in the back that
But
comes in once a month.
But it could end up adding up to, depending, how big the song is, where else it's being played. Like the royalties is something that is a bonus and could be a big piece of the income pie at the end of the day. But
No, yeah,
it's
just
like
a nice
sometimes
check.
it's fractions and stuff.
Yeah, you're
so-
talking pennies on the dollar. But the reason why you allow your music to get into Teen Mom
But it could happen.
is because somebody watches on Teen Mom, hears the song, they get the little placement thing at the bottom of the episode saying, hey, this is your song. Somebody goes and streams it, or like starts streaming it on Spotify, you're getting more looks, you're getting people to look you up. So you're willing to take that $500 for that one use, because yeah, it's a nice check monthly, but more people are gonna now go look for you, because now you're a Teen Mom and they heard that song during that scene, and other places are gonna start rising. That's why you take a deal like that. That's why you get a sync like that, because you're not necessarily that established, and you want to see your other socials and your other, indicators kind of start rising. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Sorry,
Yeah, thank you.
Could you guys maybe touch a little bit on like advocacy or industry advocacy? Like how would I go about communicating, I guess, with one of these agencies or presenting myself in such a way to be noticed? I'm not just gonna go, hey, here's a thumb drive of all my stuff, listen to it, tell me what you think. I mean, I know that there's a way to go about it, so how would I do that in a professional manner that would kind of set me apart to be seen?
Yeah, no, that's also a great question, because I think that's what.
I just don't think it's something that's talked about enough, is like
Mhm.
advocacy in our industry.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are really kind of like stumped on how to.
I think everybody is different as far on the receiving end, as far as how they want to, go through submissions and stuff like that. But I do think that in general, you don't want to be like constantly blowing someone up. I think you can, if you like really have a company that you believe is a fit, you hear the music that they represent, you know that you really have done your research and think this is it, then writing hitting them up, finding the submissions, there's gonna be the way that we make sure you guys have your contact information, and we make sure that we'll have our contact information on there as well. And, following, you can write them an email with, I would say, making sure that it's easy to stream. That's like a quick couple lines about who you are, and maybe like a photo, and rather than seven.
Think about your elevator pitch.
Yes, rather than like a 7-paragraph email that I think that people are inundated, so if the easier easier it is to digest, and putting your best song at the top, and in case I only get through one, in case it's like one and move on, best song at the top, a couple of lines, a photo, easy to stream, and then I would say you can follow up a few times, not like not every day, but like a few times, and if it's not, if that's not the fit, then then move on to the next. But I don't think that there's any harm in following up if it's somewhere that you really believe in. But what are some other ways I think you could do? People write us on like LinkedIn or DM and stuff, and every once in a while, like if it's, I'll like, do you ever, I'll like read it?
Yeah, I get hit up, we
It
get
can
hit up
happen
a
that way,
lot.
but as far as like best practice goes, it is honestly a harder question than you think, but I really think like the hustle, like just constantly, without being, every day like in someone's inbox, because nobody wants that ever, but I think that like just putting your music out there, and like I was saying before, if the quality is there, someone's gonna bite. They're mutually beneficial relationships,
Right.
Companies like mine, for example, we want to work with artists who are creating exciting music, so, and we're not the ones who are creating the music, we need you, we need artists, we need creators, we want to find if the music is of the quality to be found, it's going to be found, and you're providing a service rather than being
A nuisance.
But you're right, because these music supervisors or the people who are assigning artists to their companies are inundated, and so I would say that, keeping that in mind, short and sweet, polite, you can follow up, and not every, and if you don't hear after like 3 follow-ups, it's like, okay, maybe.
Put yourself out there too, like
That's
go to find different types of conferences, events, things that are going on in the city. There's so many things in music-oriented spaces that are happening. And again, think outside of the box. Where is music being used that you just didn't think about before, that you can find a niche in? Like you just didn't, it didn't even, how about AI? Like, if you're a tech person,
It's a whole other category. That's scary.
well,
sometimes.
again, I'm not saying let's dig into it. I'm saying like think about places that you really like hear music, or you think about music that you weren't thinking about before. Like I almost took a job buying music into educational products, like just simple music that just needs to be used on a CD drive. That's going to be, while a 5-year-old learns how to like write words, like it's simple as that. Like music is used in so many places.
Mm-hmm.
Think about finding, being out there into the world where those, that music or the music that you're trying to create is being used. Whether that's advertising or, get into, or music, production music libraries, or going out to shows all the time and meeting people that way. Like I sit at the bar, again, I've been in the industry for a while, so I know I can kind of point these things out, but like I can sit at a bar at a show and know like 5 or 6 people who are in the industry just by looking at that bar and seeing who's there. Just because I can see how they're standing, what they're looking at, what they're drinking, and like what they're about, and like the way that they hold themselves. Or like I can see who's the art, like who are the artists, who are the creative people. You just kind of learn the room at shows pretty easily just by being out there, just by collaborating, just by meeting people out, in the world. I think you can kind of find that.
Yeah, and I do think that we have the tools with the internet, with with your social media. You can, and it's easy to find out who's the music supervisor on the show, who works at this company, whatever. And so getting in front of them, tweeting, messaging them, DMing, that to get a little bit more notice, like you can do that. Again, as long as you're not harassing someone, but to like use those tools that you have, it's okay to put yourself out there. One of the times it might work and that might be the time. But
Law of diminishing returns on that.
yeah. No, it's true. There is definitely a hustle that comes with it but if that's your passion and if that's what you want to do, then the right person, it'll get into the hands of the right person. But yeah, I think one of the things that we wanted to also talk about is just the other jobs that sometimes you think like, okay, a musician, that's, and by the way, like, if that's the goal, then keep pushing, and that's the goal. But sometimes you can do that, but it doesn't mean that you're the touring musician that has made their career being, doing concerts and that whole thing. You can be, so in our job, especially in the sync world, we work with musicians all day long who maybe did that in their past, and now they're like, all right, I need something a little bit more stable, maybe have a family or whatever it is, and don't necessarily want to tour all the time. So there are all these jobs for musicians that aren't necessarily touring musicians. So in my world, it's the music houses. So a lot of my clients are music houses that are hired by ad agencies or trailer houses or the studios to create the music for the projects. And so they are, sometimes full live recording rooms, and they're, creating real songs and real music, but it's not to be the next hit song, it's to fit in this.
It's literally just for this project, so we can literally make music just for a specific project as needed.
And so one of our interns recently, who's an artist herself, she didn't even realize that this existed, and then ended up moving on to work with them, and that she's like, oh my god, this is like exactly what I wanted to be doing. So just because you're still working creatively with music, you're writing to brief, and if that's something that excites you, that there's like a whole world. It's just not the most obvious one in the music industry that everybody talks about, but there is, and there's an opportunity to make full livings. Like some of the producers and artists that we work with are not the ones that are active artists, but they have built homes, they have full successful careers doing music for production. So
yeah.
just
you can
staying
score
open
anything
to,
you need at that point.
staying open
Composers. There's also, like I was saying before, like literally just writing lyrics, like writing a hook. Like you don't have to be the singer-songwriter. You can be the writer and be perfectly, and make a living just being a writer. You don't have to do it. You don't have to write, you don't have to sing your own songs. You never have to do that if you don't want to.
I wish I had that talent.
No.
You just need one hit.
Yeah, just one.
Like they take you for the whole life.
Just like that one TikTok.
Yeah,
Just
that
that
one.
one TikTok.
That's the thing. But I will say, sometimes with these TikTok, like your song could be really buzzy at the moment, and then you might get excited with these like labels or maybe big publishers like throwing money at you. I would just caution everyone to make sure you're like never taking like the first deal that like might look exciting at the time. Like if your song goes up on TikTok tomorrow, amazing, that would be great. But sometimes some of the bigger corporations, I think, sometimes try to like take advantage of that, and you don't want to end up in some sort of long deal where you're like giving your rights away for a long time. I just like always encourage emerging artists to like really be thoughtful about any contract that they're signing, making sure that like there's so many different avenues now to like have your music represented that you don't need to be like signed to a big major label or a big major publisher in order to be successful. So just being cautious with making sure that you have some other people look at it rather than just being like, oh, so-and-so from Atlantic Records contacted me, great, like here's my music. Not just like slow down for a second.
I know you mentioned a couple times in this conversation how certain deals can require you giving up certain like rights that you have, whether like I think you said if like
I love the notes.
I took so many notes. If they're giving you like a certain amount of money up front, like that might be part of the deal. And so when does it make sense to give up some of your rights? Like when is it worth it, or should you just avoid it?
It's a good question. I would say that I mean, only if it's a large amount of money and you're also knowing that you can write a bunch more songs. That would be the only thing, because otherwise I don't think that you need to give up any rights, and you can still have companies like mine, for example, representing your music to the full capacity. Because we represent music in the same way that a big major label or publisher would represent music, but we don't take any rights away. I think that maybe down, if your music is extremely popular and you're gonna get a huge advance where it justifies that, then you can go into a co-pub. But I don't know, I don't think that I would advise that if it was.
Do you want like half the pie of a large pie, or do you want to take like 100% of the smaller pie?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to decide how that's going to work for you. If it's just a specific amount of songs, if it's your whole catalog that's suddenly now, invested into this company, right? That's scary, right? Or you're going to write more on the side for somebody else. Like, you could be a recording artist and then also do other things with your music too. You could make production music on the side. I remember I've talked to a couple of people who not only have the recording thing happening and have the touring thing happening, but then on the side they're like, oh, and by the way, if you need somebody to write this for score for this, film, I can do that too.
But you have to make sure you carve that
Right, of course.
out of any deal. So if you're signing to a label, for example, you want to make sure that you're not in a full exclusive recording contract. And if you are, that's fine, because they're gonna hopefully give you all the services that you need. But it's amazing if you can carve that out, because then anything that you do outside of this one album that you promised them that you have to deliver for them, you could still make money writing the song.
I was speaking more on the indie.
It actually happened one time to one of my friends who was signed to, what's the name of, it does just like EDM, it's based in New
Ultra?
York. Ultra.
Yeah, good one.
And he got this deal with Netflix. He wrote the soundtrack for Arcane.
Arcane?
Yes.
Oh, great.
And he had to do it like in the dark because he was still signed to Ultra.
Okay.
And the contract will ended like in May. But in
Uh-huh.
the meantime, he was working with Riot for the
Right,
soundtrack.
games,
yeah.
But he was signed to Ultra as like an artist. And he just released the last album that he was within like the contract, but he couldn't like do anything like with the soundtrack with Arcane and Netflix because Ultra owned everything.
Totally.
So he was waiting till the end of the
Yep.
contract to start like talking about the soundtrack.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Because if
And he
you
was super scared. He was
Yeah.
like, I can't talk about it. He was
Yeah.
calling the Super Project X.
Yeah, exactly, because they own anything that you record on, if you're under an exclusive recording contract, then that label will own everything that you record in that period of time. So unless you carve out that in your deal, which you can.
I wanted to ask also like questions since like you said that you work in your past like with Sony. So what are the big differences between working with Sony or third side music? So like major label, like indie label.
Totally, and
Yeah,
first of all,
great
just to make the distinction, I went from a big label to a small publisher, so it's not like I went from a big label to a small label,
Sorry, publishing.
but it's,
Was that a
it's
personal choice?
still at the end of the
Same
day, a big major corporation versus a little company, but just to make that distinction, because it wasn't like exactly label to label, it was label to publisher, but at the end of the day, my job is still representing music to be used in sync licensing. And from that perspective, a few differences. At a major label, they're like very much beholden to like the release schedule and the priorities, and they'll kind of be making sure that you're pitching the like music that is aligning with the music that they're pushing out right now, that marketing is behind. Labels usually operate like all hands on deck with like the release of a new track, and they want the sync at the same time that they're pushing out the album, that they're doing the campaign with this brand, and that they're kind of trying to do it all at once. So you're a little bit more beholden to pitch music based on the priorities and the agenda of the big major label as a machine, whereas independent, smaller company, you can kind of be flexible with what, and I'm really just pitching music with like what works creatively rather than, oh, this is, you know, the artist cycle, or this is when their album's being released or whatever. We do take that into consideration for sure, but it's more like less red tape, I would say. And one of the biggest things as at an independent publisher right now is I can make those decisions for where to license the music on behalf of the artist with their best interests in mind, and meaning that at a label, if you're a smaller, even though you're at this major label, you can be a smaller artist. You're not always the big famous ones, but at a major, you might see this thing come in and it's $20,000 for an ad. The major label might say, I don't have time in my day for this $20,000 one. I'm used to doing $100,000 ones. We're not going to pitch this artist. We're not even going to answer this brief. We're not even going to send out any music. Whereas at my company, or at an independent, a smaller company, that I'm absolutely going to want to send the artist the $20,000 opportunity my artist forward for, because that really can move the needle for this artist, even though if they were signed to the label, they might not get that opportunity, but because they're independent, I can make those decisions without any sort of red tape or the label has to
Sign off on.
Yeah, sign off on and all that. So it's really just us making decisions that, along with the artist based on what's in their best interest. So, and they trust us to be on the front lines for them in sync licensing, to know what's a good deal and what's a bad deal. Like, you should go, well, and by the way, that's another thing. We're an admin rather than signing our rights away. So I still have to go to the songwriter and the artist to get their permission to license the music. So I'll say, this is the deal, I'm going to show it to you, but I think that you could do better, or I think this is great, we've already negotiated it, this is the best they can do, we think you should go for it. So we'll give our advice, but at the end of the day, they could be like, actually, I don't align with that brand, so I don't want my music used there.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, of course.
From a actual working standpoint, as far as I work for a giant company. Paramount Global is huge. From a job and work standpoint, I've been in record labels. I've done touring. I've done some tour merchandise stuff. So I've been in different facets of the music industry. Finding music publishing. Just from a job, let's say you've had your writing career, but you want to work in the music industry and you want to be part of the business side of things, right? And you want a job in music. On our world, publishing is so stable. I could have a house, I could have a family, I have 2 beautiful kids and a beautiful wife. I'm not worried about what my artist is doing on the road. I'm not concerned about all of the things that like a record label, like streaming, or all those things might be. And I could have a nice lifestyle. So like working in the publishing world, to me feels very it's not glamorous, or it's not as glamorous as say like the record label A&R going out and like finding the next big thing, or you can go find the next big thing at publishers.
Yes.
And that's a job too. But like it's just a wonderful space to kind of live in and feel good about, because there's always people that are looking for music. There's music everywhere, and it's so saturated, and there's just always something happening, right? So like whether it's in television, whether it's like all the different examples of companies that we've been saying, whether you're the ones that are creating for these companies, or you want to work on the side that we're on, it's just a space that's just constantly happening. There's and there's places where technology is driving it. There's places like AI, like we were saying before. There's places where music services like disco are driving, change in the industry. Like, how do you get your music to people? Through disco. You can't send an 8 megabyte file through email. Use disco. Learn what disco is and how to send music that way. Like just different kinds of opportunities to grow within the music space, whether it's publishing or otherwise. You got a question?
Yeah, just as like a follow-up to what you're saying, from how would you transition, or how would you advise an artist who wanted to transition to like your side of the business? I assume it's not just send a resume if there isn't a traditional one to send really.
Right. I mean, so many people like I had this conversation. I've had this conversation so many times with people in the industry. Like, I went to school for music. You guys are doing a music situation, but before, like I was telling Tom earlier, like in 2002, 2001, when I was going to school, there was only 3 programs of music. It was up by me at least. Oneonta has one, which is where I went. NYU had a program for music industry, but that's before Clive Davis threw all his money into it. And there was a place down in Miami. So, Nashville I didn't even know that Nashville had music schools at that point. Never thought about Berkeley because I was too far away because I was in Long Island. And I went to Oneonta. And I just started collaborating with as many people as I possibly could there. And that's it. And it just started from there. Other people went on tour with their friends and just like worked the band merch for 8 months and then became fucking music pros. Sorry, excuse my language. They just became music industry pros. They just figured it out, on their own, and they just stayed in the business all those years and became just meeting people and learning and whatever, like out on the road, and just figured it out. There's so many different ways to do it now. Coming from a creative space, having the ear, getting into recording, whatever it is that you're doing, gives you that kind of edge, or finding that elevator pitch, so that when you're in those conversations, you can transition yourself through that door.
Yeah, I think it used to be a little bit more like artists were in the artist space and then the business side was in the business space, but I think more and more now I'm like looking for, like if I started our internship program at Third Side, and if an intern that I'm interviewing with is telling me that they're an artist but want to learn more about the sync licensing space, I think that that's a great fit too, because also you're able to bring the ear and the production side of things, which ends up like being a necessity when you're thinking about placing music to picture. You just are speaking the language, so you're already coming with this whole knowledge set that we need, and you can help like translate what it is that a production's looking for their specific vision. So a lot of my colleagues in the industry are former musicians and stuff, and I think really just kind of associating with programs like this music program that you guys are in, and attending shows and talking to, it's such a collaborative business, and so attending any of those type of things where you're connecting with different people who have similar goals and stuff with you, you're like kind of there's communities in this world, and just kind of tapping into that world by showing up. Like, I know like the Guild of Music Supervisors, for instance, they do events and stuff and that are open, and there's student rates and stuff like that. So like attending something like that, and just kind of meeting people in that space and following up, and yeah, just kind of being around in that world, and will eventually lead you to transition into that world organically.
You had a question, right?
Well, I did. I actually have a couple of questions.
Yeah, we all do.
We have, I think, not too much time left, but I mean, I could stay for a while,
We
but
can
just
do
for
this
your
all day.
guys' time's sake as well, just wanted to be aware of it.
Okay.
I'm around to answer any questions.
I guess, what are the negative effects of AI as far as job security is concerned for us? And that's one. And then companies like DistroKid and United Masters, how does that affect you all, what you do and your companies, as far as independent artists looking to get themselves out there? How does that work exactly?
Take the second question first.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna take the first question.
Really? You want to talk AI right now?
Well, my short answer to that is that people buying music at the end of the day, I think, are gonna want authentic artists, and I think that there'll be some places where an AI-generated song might take place of, you know, your work as an actual artist, but that's gonna be a small, like, so production music, like a small aspect of it. Most of my clients that are needing music, it'll specifically say, we want, you know, authentic, we want, yeah, we want real artists who could tell a story, they wanna support artists, and I don't think that that is gonna push out all of the opportunity for music in sync, because at the end of the day, people want to work with real humans and not, and not a computer. And I saw a funny meme that said, something along the lines of, creatives are going to have to articulate what they need properly in order for AI to be able to understand it, so they go, us creatives are safe, because they, a lot of the time the job is just trying to figure out what the clients want, because they have a hard time articulating it anyway, so I don't think it's something that a computer is gonna be able to fix. But the other part of the question,
About DistroKid?
Yeah.
And about those other things?
yeah.
That doesn't hit me, that hits you more.
No,
than it hits me.
I'm not even too familiar with that world. I think that might affect on the label side a little bit.
Yeah, it's more about your distribution.
Yeah,
you know.
not my expertise, but.
I would say all that stuff kind of, all those like digital distribution companies are great when you're starting out because it helps you get all of your music into places and platforms that they need to be in.
Or
I think-
playlists, yeah.
Yeah, and I think once you start getting bigger and like you use those services in order to get you to a specific space, and then once, you know, then a label hears you, and then something changes, right? And then, you know, you don't need those services anymore. Again, what is a label or any of these big companies gonna do mostly for you is provide a team, provide you money, provide you some kind of revenue or way of generating revenue with some backing behind you, right? That's really what these companies are for. It's a partnership to make money together, right? So whether it's a label, whether it's a creative services company, whether it's a publishing company, it's really to partner together to use your creative work to bring you up and make money from everybody, right, at the end of the day. And if they're not doing that, then it's not working. Make sure that all the, you know, the places that you're partnering with and the people that you're partnering with and the companies that you're partnering with are doing or helping you kind of do those things, right? Whether it's DistroKid or CD Baby or any of these companies that are doing this digital distribution for you, or if you can do it on your own, or if you have a guy at home that can just put it all up there for you, like, you know, that's one step in the right direction of getting yourself into those spaces. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk a little bit more about what you do? I understand that you get a lot of music cleared, and that
Yeah.
sounds like you need to know a lot about like maybe music law.
Yeah.
What would your background be
Right.
for even coming to the table with, you know, saying, hey, I'm great for this job?
Right, so my job is I'm not a lawyer, that's number one. I could have gone to law school for entertainment law, but I chose not to because I can't read. I fall asleep when I read, so it's not pretty, unless I'm really into what I'm reading. But I went to Oneonta, I started doing music business stuff. I realized that I'm not creative whatsoever in any kind of form other than creative negotiation.
You do have to be creative to negotiate.
Yeah,
It's
oh
very
yeah,
true.
oh hell yeah. You should see some of the things I've negotiated. But, you know, no, I'm not really that creative. I knew I wanted to be in the music industry though, so I started doing as much music industry stuff as possible in college, collaborating with the people around me, you know, doing demos. Again, I wasn't creative, so I would have a creative person next to me who had the ear, so when somebody's trying to play an E flat and I couldn't hear it, somebody else heard it. You know, like hearing that didn't sound so good on the demo, like let's do it again. I can't do that, but I can bring the pizza, I can book the studio time, I can bring the alcohol, and I can get us all together and work the board. So like that's what I would do and bring people together that way. Started doing all that kind of stuff, got some jobs, you know, right out of school at some record labels doing radio promotion and other types of jobs surrounding record labels. Then moved on to like tour merchandise. Learning revenue through touring and merchandising and getting your music, you know, getting your band T-shirts into Spencer's Gifts and things like that, which is again revenue generating for an artist. You know, even though it's not something that you would generally think of as like, hey, I'm excited to be an artist because I get to make a T-shirt. You know, no, you want to make the music, you want to tour. but you make money off merchandise. Then again, I found publishing. And publishing is basically just rights and clearance. So like, it's my job to look up whatever song that wants to be used, see who the writers are, see who the people, see who represents those writers, and reach out to those people and say, hey, we want to use this song in this show, and we're willing to offer you X amount of dollars as a sync fee. Is that cool? And then somebody who's on third side, not Kristin specifically, but somebody who's on the sync team, who I talk to regularly, will go out to that writer that they represent and say, hey, Paramount's looking to put this song into Teen Mom. It's gonna, they're willing to give us X amount of dollars. What do you think? Is that something that you guys want to be a part of? They say yes, they say no, they come back, they negotiate, they say they want X more, they want more money, they want, whatever things that they want, and we negotiate. And then I go back and I tell production exactly what it's going to be. So my job is not only sales and negotiation, but then at the end of the day, it's also a rights management job. So at the end of the day, I have to make sure that my show can live for as many years that my network executives want the show to live for. They want to put it on Pluto TV, they want to put it on Netflix later on, they want to sell it to, they want to put it in a movie theater, whatever it is. Like, I have to know that I have those rights for X amount of years, for X amount of money, and I'm within budget, of the show budget, and I make sure that all of that is in play and that it can live as long as they want it to live. So like, Wild and Out gets cleared for 3 years. This is minutia, but gets cleared for 3 years, and then we have an opportunity to exercise a renewal for another 3 years. Or we exercise an all media option. So I go out with like 3 options and I say, hey, look, we want to use this song for 3 years, we'll give you X amount of dollars, then we'll pay you another amount of dollars after 3 years, or we're going to say we want this for all media, and we're going to pay you even more money. And that all kind of comes, and I negotiate all of those things. Does that make
Attention
sense?
to detail and negotiation skills are definitely strong
Yeah.
in that.
Cool.
So, and again, because it's Paramount, it's not, people are always looking for music. There's companies that are always buying music, right, no matter where you go. So I'm in a business that's never going away. I never have to worry about it falling off. I could, and to be fair, before my team became Creative Music Services or Creative Music Strategy, we were doing music and media licensing. So I also know rights and clearances for footage, for photos, for landmarks, for social media, for quotes, for books. So any kind of creative, artwork that's used to, show like in the background of certain shows, like posters, whatever it is. So I can do rights and clearances for all of it. My focus and my love is music. It's always been music. But like picture MTV Cribs, which is I'm on MTV Cribs. Not only do I have to license all the music with all that, but like imagine if not only was I dealing with the music, but I was also dealing with all of the things in those people's houses. Thankfully, we split, and now somebody else handles all that. You just imagine the amount of like posters and album covers and paintings and oh my god, they have like a picture of so and so and like the likeness of that person and I just can't imagine. Thankfully, it's just music now. So I also get involved in picking music supervisors. So like if we have a new show coming out and I know that so and so is available to music super and he does shows like this all the time, we'll reach out and we'll negotiate for that. I also work with, I do some creative, I do pitch sometimes, like if I know that certain songs will be perfect for certain things, I'll get involved in that. So they didn't go with any of the songs that my team pitched, but we were involved in the pitching and creative process for The Family Stallones, which just premiered, which they ended up going with Cake by the Ocean, which doesn't make any sense to me. We didn't like it. It's terrible. We didn't like it, but they did it. And it's a catchy hook. It's cool. They don't say the words "Cake by the Ocean" because it doesn't fit their values. Remember we were talking about values before? That's what made me think of that. Cake by the Ocean is sex on the beach. They don't want that family to be associated with sex on the beach.
Yeah.
But they love the
That's about something.
yeah. But they love the
The feel,
the
the
feel, the vibe, whatever it
Yeah.
was, and you know who pitched it? You know whose idea that was? One of the daughters. We didn't even
Always
give it to
happens
him.
that way.
We didn't even give it to him. It was the daughter who sent us like 5 songs to go search or like to go kind of go with that she wanted. So her the next season of the show is going to be about her new career as a music supervisor. I'm sure, because she's now going to suddenly become a music supervisor because she thinks that she can do this for a living. It's insane. But that's what happens. Like I deal with so many egos, whether it's television executives, people who think they could have whatever music they want on television. They don't realize that you can't have the Beatles while you're shooting somebody out of a cannon during whatever tentpole event that you did, right? Like they don't realize it, but they want it.
Or they
So
have like 10K and they want
Yeah.
to license the Beatles.
Yeah.
No, not happening.
Yeah, it may not happen, right? Like we are constantly negotiating and liaising between like what the network creatives want to do, what's possible, and kind of trying to figure out, you know, the best course of action from a music standpoint. So like, you know, and then also we do things like rescore episodes. So like, let's say you have really old shows that we want to put on a new platform. We have to go into those shows. We don't have the rights to that music anymore, so we have to now put in new music. You know, for the whole show, for the whole episode, whatever it is. And again, we use production library music to do that, which we own or can clear all media worldwide in perp, so we never have to rescore it again. So if you ever notice, if you watch Jersey Shore Family Vacation, when it airs on television, you hear some popular music in it, or like The Challenge, you'll hear some popular music in it that you would have heard on the radio. Now, in like 3 years, if you go back and watch this episode on, let's say, Paramount Plus, or like some of the older shows, like the old versions of the show, the old seasons of the show, it's all new music, because we do 2 versions. We do a popular version and a scored, like a more scored version, because that music never has to go away. And we can always leave it in there for all time, basically. So we have to work in those rights spaces. Yeah.
You mentioned values,
Mhm.
and I'm assuming that you mean values of the company. Like, does that also like encompass censorship or censored versus explicit?
Yep.
Is that kind of like what you mean
In
in that sense?
we touched about that a little bit before of like a company only wanting or only able to license certain, the song has to kind of align with you know, you don't want to be talking about murdering if you're doing something that's like selling for the kid back to school or something like that. But I will say that if you put your best foot forward as an artist who's trying to get their music licensed, if I'm talking to my artists and advising them on our team, you have to deliver all the cleans, and sometimes it's not just bleeping it out, it's, you know, changing the word or making it in a way that it's gonna not sound really weird if it gets placed somewhere, otherwise they just won't use it. And obviously if your music is super dark, there's a place for that in film and TV, that there's a place for there could be everything, you know, there could be anything. But if I'm going to speak from like the advertising perspective of what's going to be licensed, it's going to be the more positive, helpful, empowering, feel good type of music, unless, you know, there's certain exceptions there.
On my side of things, we get into situations where certain artists and libraries don't want their music in certain types of programming, you know, like on the buying side. So like, I remember I was at a production music library in the NFL catalog, so we represented the NFL music that's specifically made for NFL games, all production music, not like music that they show going into breaks, but like other types of production music that they were now selling to other people. They said absolutely no nudity, no derogatory uses, no porn, like none of that. We couldn't sell any of that music into those spaces. So there are places for all of it, but there are always, you know, values that are being checked all the time, whether it's, you know, like I said before, somebody's going to Google you, somebody's going to Google what you're all about. And if that advertiser or that director or that music supervisor or that person doesn't see that you're going to fit or doesn't want to be associated with the kind of content that you're putting out into the world as a person, that might either help or hurt you. Yeah.
Can you speak to, you're saying like, for the advertising side, it's more safer, family-friendly stuff, but I assume, like you said, there's an opportunity for all types of music, so for something that's more alternative, darker, I assume like those opportunities would be less frequent or like less money in the deal itself, or how would that look? Like, what would that look like in comparison?
Yeah, there's definitely room for all sorts of music across the board to be licensed. We work with an artist called Ghostmate. I don't know if you know him.
I've heard of him. He's like a mix of like rap and heavy metal.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
I really didn't, when I first got the music, I was like, okay, this isn't the most obvious thing for advertising, but then it ended up getting in, I think it was a couple of years ago, but it was the Balenciaga campaign. And so like, there are, I know that brand had some controversial things happen to it as well. However, so there are certain exceptions to, and also for instance, it could be, there's music playing counterpart. So it could be, they're trying to sell like a relaxing product or something. So they're gonna show you've all seen the commercials where it's like, the person is like going crazy up in their room, like listening to this loud music or whatever, and then it's like cut to like if they use this product, they'll feel relaxed or whatever, or they're in traffic and they need, and it's like, so there is,
You just
to
never
tell a
think
story,
of that,
to
right?
tell the
Like
story,
you would never
yeah.
put that together, that could be your music, right?
But having your music represented at, an established sync company that's seeing all the different briefs go by is the best way to go, because it's gonna be hard to like point and shoot that one like opportunity for that, specific sound. But if you're a company that represents your music, is seeing all the briefs, then your music is gonna make it into these different briefs that make sense for that particular thing. So I always say, like, I needed like polka music the other day, or like just random stuff like that where it's like, I can never say like, oh, that music will never get synced, or sometimes stuff sounds so syncable and then you never get a license for it. So sync is a hard thing to like, be like, 100% this is true, but there's certain things that like you can, try to do to at least put your best foot forward in that. So if your music is dark or whatever, heavy or whatever, maybe you at least have clean versions where it's not explicit the whole entire time, or at least you have an instrumental version where if the lyrics are really, but sometimes some places care about, and really this is mostly for brands because it's about representing the brand, they won't use a song even if it's just instrumental, only if the actual lyrics are explicit. Some brands care, some brands don't. So,
Drake's on there clean up too.
yeah.
I mean, think about all the amazing, like, dark dramas that are going on right now, right? Like, some instrumental, like, edginess that's needed for a lot of that stuff, whether it's in the trailer or whatnot. Like, there's just
Yeah,
so
I have
much
a brief right now for dark pop that I was working on earlier, and this trailer, it's a new, I think, Netflix show, and they needed a song that was super dark, super moody, like that's in the trailer.
But that's why publishing is just such a vast space, because people are always looking for music. People are always out there trying to find next big things, especially writers, next big producers, like pitching your beats to some rapper or whatever, like trying to find yourself, like anything, like even just creating jingles. Like it's just, there's so much stuff out there in publishing that can make you money.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be, I'm gonna go on tour.
Yeah.
I love the idea of stability in the music industry.
Yes.
And like,
Yes.
I'm just like, people don't really feel like it's a thing, but it really can be.
It can be.
It is
That's what
why.
makes me excited.
Yeah, it is why I moved over. I was on the buying side, and I had the opportunity to go freelance music supervisor, but they're kind of always hustling for the next job. And even though it's kind of a glamorous job and you get a lot of perks, when you really
I
get down
kinda
to the
do that
nitty
at some point
gritty,
in my life.
it's not as glamorous as it looks, and then only like a certain few break through to be the celebrity music
Alex
superstars.
Fest,
Yeah,
yeah.
certain Jen Malone and et cetera, who was
Jen Malone was
started
amazing.
at MTV.
Jen Malone started at MTV. She did Euphoria, Atlanta. What else? So many.
Yellow Jacket.
Yellow Jackets.
Well, Euphoria is really the big one, but
Yeah.
a bunch of other ones. I don't know her exact credits, but
She started at MTV too.
but there's are rare cases that you really like hit the jackpot on that front. But then I moved over to like the pitching side and on publishing. I'm like, okay, there's like 401k. And
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sure
have a
it's-
family. Like I wouldn't have a family
It's
if
a
I
little bit
was-
more stable than
Yeah.
some of the other crazy
Yeah.
things. But yeah.
But do your artist thing first. Follow your dreams. I knew my dream was music industry business. Like I knew that from like day one. Well, there you
That's
go.
the thing, but
Yeah.
I think I deal
Yeah.
with that all the time with our interns that are coming up, and a lot of them are musicians as well, and it's like keep doing both and see which, and most of the people that get into the career didn't think that they were gonna be in that lane that they started in, so like keeping an open mind and connecting with as many people as possible, and going to these things where you're meeting new contacts and all that, and we'll just kept moving one foot in front of the other to help figure out how to turn this into a career. Because there's
Yeah.
tons of different avenues, but it definitely is a world that requires a passion for, because a lot of the times it's not just, sometimes I get jealous of my friends who are like, yeah, it's my 9 to 5 and I turn my computer off and I don't look. I'm literally like constantly, my job is very client based. I'm always trying to get that next opportunity for our artists, and so those searches might come in late at night, early morning, and if I'm not the one sending music, somebody else is going to be the one sending music, and then I might miss out on that opportunity even though we have like the perfect song to send. So there's certain aspects in this industry that kind of keeps you turned on all the time. You have to be out at shows, out at events, networking, and that kind of world, whereas certain other jobs, it's a little less.
Hopefully you didn't miss a pitch just
But-
being here.
But no, the perks of working in music, because you love it, are end up paying off, because you're working with a lot of different musicians. You're getting access to live music and to certain things, and you're making money off of doing something that you love. So
You may have already touched on this, but
I know we're going way over. So if anyone has to leave, it's all good. But we'll keep answering questions as long as you have them.
okay. How exactly does composing music for film work, and what's the payout in the royalties? Like, is it the same as you have to rent the music, or is it like a one-time buyout and collect royalties from it because it's a film? How exactly?
You stayed a lot longer than we expected.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to, but it's really interesting.
Good, I'm glad.
Well,
Take care.
Okay, bye. Film composing is a whole other world. That's I have a team that focuses on that with our songwriters within our company, and a lot of the times the films themselves will fight to retain the rights to that soundtrack, at least for this period of time, 1 year, 5 years, whatever it is. But if you could fight to not have them own the rights to it, then that would be better. However, sometimes if you're working on a big film, there could be a really big budget where it makes sense to give up rights in that.
A lot of stuff like that ends up, especially on the smaller sides, end up being work for hires.
Yeah.
You heard the term work for hire before? Yeah, so a lot of composing for low budget indie films, the lawyers that are on these low budget indie films, especially if you're starting out, require that the music be a work for hire. So you'll get a payment, one flat fee, to compose for this film. And again, it's great to start off with and get your name out there.
Resume builder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a resume builder. It gets you going. It gets
Yeah.
you started. Again, some of these things are baby steps that you sometimes just need to take to get your name out there and see how the other spaces around you start rising just by doing it.
And
it all
if it's
depends.
something that you're good at and passionate about, the idea is that you can make more of that. So if you have to give up those rights for that film, because that is as opposed to like a, you know, just a regular sync license, a soundtrack, a composing, sometimes they do, you know, work for hires, they do try to retain the rights, so, yeah. That's just kind of how that works, and that's a whole other world, because there's also composer agents, and they're representing you on your behalf to get you placed into projects the way that like a director agent or a writer's agent would be, so that's separate than like a publishing company or.
That's a lot. You gonna stop us?
Well, I think that this might be a good time to kind of wrap things up. I
Yeah.
want to say thank you very much to Kristin and Daniel for being here.
Thank you.
This is some amazing insight that they offered, and we're going to stay in touch with them.
Yeah.
And you know, we hope to do more of these kinds of talks as we go get into the next academic year. But thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here.
Absolutely, yeah.